Well, there we go. Hopefully that's all worked. Let's hit the button. Oh, hey, my hair's a mess. What did we think? What did we think of the new music? As I said, another one of those changes. Just because what I worked out was that Max's new intro graphic, the rolling graphic that he made, if you had that and you had music streamed via the internet, it was taking up too much of the CPU. Whereas actually what I've done is I've downloaded some royalty-free tracks and done it that way, and actually just playing it through playing it through my media player has worked. Has worked because it's not nuked my CPU, not nuked my GPU. The video rolls smooth, and you still get the audio. So I think that's worked out right. Mark, as a music connoisseur as you are, I will take that as a good thing. What have I done there? Hang on. The straw has come off of my... Great. The tech didn't fail, but my water bottle did. Something has to go wrong. It's the nature of the What's Current stream. We are lo-fi by design. Let's see if that works. There we go. Bloody hell. Well, it's been a bonkers week. We're going to have to... We'll see what we do. We'll see how we go tonight. It might run long. We'll figure that out. We'll just give it another minute or two for folk to get in. Remember to share the feeds on your social media of choice. It is out there, of course, just keeping tabs on bits and pieces as well, because, of course, good news for the Flames if the Panthers win tonight and do them a favour. At least certainly in terms of qualification for the playoffs, which we knew was pretty much coming anyway. But we just obviously want to double check. That goes there. That goes there. Andrew sent me his notes. Oh, a goal. A goal, a goal, a goal. They have indeed. It's not made there. Let's quickly look at the game sheet for that one, Mark, just before we do the start. Oh, it's at that awkward point where it hasn't actually come up who scored it. Well, there we go. Another one. Matthew Gleeson has done the business again. Right. Before it all gets too far into it, let's get on with this, shall we? Gals and the gender fluid, and all beyond the binary. It is Wednesday, it is 8 PM, and welcome back to the BOTW What's Current stream. My name is Anthony Russell, here to take you through the weird, wonderful and wacky world that is British ice hockey. What do we cover? The absolute lot of it. Every game, every league, this is where British hockey lives. Every single game from across every division, men's and women's in senior hockey here. If it was played, we'll talk about it over the next 60 to 90 minutes. Belfast to Bradford, Leeds to Lee Valley. We leave no stone unturned to look at the greatest sport on earth across our islands. And wow, yeah, been a mad few days. When you think of the gap between the end of last week's show and the start of now, a few bits have happened, just to say the least. So yeah, it's all a bit mad, and my hair, like I said, my hair is awful. Into the bargain. Either way, hope you're doing well. Hope where the show finds you at the moment, you're doing all right. Hope the catch-up crew are good. If you're joining us live, always great to see you as well. There are a few bits and pieces going on tonight, as we know, in the Elite League. In the league itself, Nottingham are taking on Dundee at the moment. If Dundee do not win this evening, the Guildford Flames will qualify for the playoffs, which will guarantee me at least another game's worth of work, so bonus for that. But the big game that everyone is talking about, Belfast and Coventry, the second leg of the Challenge Cup semi-final happening right now. Matthew Gleeson has scored a second goal for the Coventry Blaze, who now lead by 2 goals on aggregate. And we are obviously keeping tabs on that, and we will talk about the Challenge Cup in a bit. But what we should do before we do anything else, we should get the usual bits and pieces, get the housekeeping out of the way. If you're old and you've been around for a while, hum along, you know the words. If you're new, listen in, because this is where you'll get all the information you need at the top of the show. bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, your number one source for all things British hockey related. Follow me on my journey this season as I commentate on the Elite League for the Guildford Flames with In the Box Thinking, where you get some insight inside the commentary position high above the Guildford spectrum. You get some bit on what it's like to commentate on these games, some of my thoughts, and then a bit of a breakdown of the game itself. Of course, went out earlier today, went out just in time for your morning coffee. For the coffee break from Sunday's game between Guildford and Nottingham. cracking game. Guildford winning by 2-1. Superb performance from both sides. Just a really good game. Was it as good as the Sheffield game the week before? I'm not so sure. Probably not quite as high grade of entertaining. However, Justin Fazio has decided he's going to turn up in March and just steal everything from everybody. Saw Matt Robson and thought, "Oh, I can do that too," because Fazio made a couple of absolutely ridiculous saves in this game. Got saves of the week. From the Elite League, and yes, because there was nobody else within a country mile of what Fazio managed to pull out of that one. But that's obviously out there on the website. And for those of you, if you want other bits and pieces, hockey stories, long form, in depth pieces of content, and of course the latest one is up there, setting the tone with star of Shawsey, former Edinburgh Capital, a man who's got a really varied, really crazy hockey journey, Brad Bonello. So you can go check out those bits and pieces over on the website. Banners on the wall. .wordpress.com. Luca Desadri, Witness Wild Netmind, who of course we'll be mentioning when we get to NHL Division 1 North. Good to see the chat finally working compared to last week. Yeah, well, that was a nightmare, wasn't it? But hey, we're only what are we, 6-7 minutes into the show. There's plenty of time for something to break yet, Luca, and you've only just turned up, so you missed my water bottle breaking that I've just had to fix. But hey, it's not connected to the laptop, ergo it's fine. But yeah, there's a lot to talk about, so we won't harp on too much. But of course, the other bit is the chat, which is over there. Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, anything you want to talk about whilst we're banging our way through all the news and all of the bits and pieces from British hockey over the last week. Please feel free to do so. But if you are going to use the chat, please do remember the golden rule. Rule number 1 here at BOTW: DBAD. Don't be a dick. Be respectful of other people's thoughts and feelings. We will have a jolly good time. Truncated that a little bit because. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about. Where do we start? Where should we start, shall we? Let's go back to last Friday and the maddest half an hour in Scottish ice hockey for quite some time, where we found out via Twitter that Jamie Russell had quit as head coach and GM of the Fife Flyers, saying he could no longer in good conscience do the role, which is always a great choice of words to read, given everything that's happened with Fife this season. Of course, we then saw Milan Lucic not ice for the Flyers across the weekend. Back in training. This week is my understanding. That was reported in the Fife Free Press. So whether I see him this weekend, as the Flyers are due down in Guildford on Saturday, remains to be seen. I'll answer that question momentarily, Rossi, because I've just seen it pop up into the chat. But yeah, a pretty crazy weekend. And then just after that announcement from Jamie Russell comes out, Dundee have been bought by Glasgow, or more precisely, the company owned by Michael O'Rourke, who is responsible for Premier Sports. His company own the Glasgow Clan. They own the Braehead Arena. Have now bought the Dundee Stars into the bargain off of the previous well, it was now the previous ownership from the Ward family, but is now part of that entity as well. So let's take these slightly in order. The Fife situation, of course, is a complete dumpster fire. And again, we find ourselves at the end of coming towards the end of the Elite League season, and the Fife Flyers are kind of writing off the season and looking again. I remember, and for those of you who are old enough to remember, we, from a National League perspective, when everything I did was much more National League focused, and obviously it's this season where BOTW has kind of expanded out the What's Current stream to look at everything. Older viewers of the show remember the summer of the Steel Dogs and the summer of the Raid, and then the following summer with the Raiders, and the madness of the weird sort of ownership situation there, and whatever is happening with Fife in terms of getting themselves back on an even keel obviously remains to be seen. There was a long time between now and the start of the 26-27 season, so I've been around British hockey long enough where I will not write anything out. I will not say no to anything. My understanding and the want of all sides is that the Fife Flyers will be back at the start line for the 26-27 Elite League campaign. That's what I have right now. That is the intention of everybody involved. However, a lot remains to be seen in terms of what's happening. We, of course, had the announcement from Fife that the ownership has changed model. There's new investment and the like. There are even some rumours that Lucic himself has invested into the club. However, nothing of that has ever come to light because the statements that have come out from the ownership, such as it is now from Fife, have been opaque, shall we say. Translucent might be better. They've given us a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, but not enough to know 100% of everything that's going on. Either way, we do know Fife will make the end of the season, and that is a start. We will work our way up from there. Jamie Russell quitting, well, clearly some issues. Again, behind the scenes, we've seen obviously a lot of bits and pieces where David Booth was brought in, Milan Lucic was brought in, and they saw a swath of people leave Fife as a result, saying they couldn't in good conscience continue. And now we have Jamie Russell saying, with the way things are now, that they can't in good conscience continue either, which is a shame, obviously. Jamie Russell was a pretty decent coach, I think, all in all, and seemed like a really good sort of character to sort of have around the league, had some really, really good ideas, but now has plenty of free time on his hands to go watch his son play playoff hockey at the end of the college hockey season, because his son, of course, does play for the University of Maine. What it's left Fife with, of course, and I do apologise because his name has completely gone out of my brain, so I do apologise for that one. Let's get the name of Fife's coach up, because he deserves to have his name actually mentioned, because it's just like I say, it's one of those things where I'm desperately trying to remember. I feel so bad about this as well, because I had his name earlier, and then it's just all gone to pot. Deary me. Somebody remind me of his name in the chat, please, because it's just utterly escaping me at the moment. It'll be on the game sheet. Where's the game sheet gone? Mike Courts, there we go. Thank you. Got there in the end. My tapping of my fingers is faster than all of yours, apparently. Another goal at the SSE. Is it 3-1? Is it now 3-1 to the Coventry Blaze? It is 3-1 to the Coventry Blaze. Just waiting on the scorer momentarily as the game sheet is updating itself. But a massive, massive moment in the course of this Challenge Cup semi-final. Jari Virtanen has the third goal. Virtanen from Alessio Luciani is what it's saying at the moment. But a huge moment there for the Coventry Blaze as they lead by 3-1 at the SSE. And we'll touch on that a little bit in a moment, obviously. Dundee, however, Fife. Mike Courts is now the sort of interim head coach of the Fife Flyers. A guy who has been involved in Fife hockey for quite a while. Certainly known for having played a fair bit of rec up there in his time. And suddenly, out of nowhere, we have Tosh Lasso, like the unlikeliest sort of coaching story of the Elite League for quite some time, being helped by Garrett Huntony and Scheid as it stands. Fife are playing for pride. They're not going to make the playoffs. I think they know that, and I think Dundee also know that too. So if you're Mike Courts, probably needs to be prepared for the fact he will not be head coach beyond this point, beyond the end of this season. So he's just got to go in there and enjoy himself. And that's all the players can really do at this point as well. It's just try and enjoy what they've got and keep moving along. Dundee being bought by Glasgow, of course, is an interesting scenario, particularly for Glasgow, given the fact, of course, they were originally the sister team, as it were. For those of you who don't remember or weren't around in British hockey at the time, the Glasgow Clan used to be owned by Neil Black, the owner of the Nottingham Panthers, and then were bought and became sort of a standalone entity. And now Glasgow have bought Dundee, and so they have swapped and are in the Nottingham Panthers position of that relationship, as it were. And certainly I think we can see from this season that things in Dundee need a bit of a refresh. On the ice, potentially off the ice as well. I can't speak. Dundee's not a venue I've ever been to. But it's certainly something has obviously not gone right this year. The Stars are well off the pace. And a change of ownership, a change of direction, a change of ideas is not necessarily a bad thing. Now, multiple ownership models are not something that in British sport we think we are prone to being happy about because of the conflict of interest. In sports in a lot of places, it's not thought of in quite the same way. If you think about something like in minor league baseball, there is one entity in minor league baseball in America that owns 40 different teams, 11 of 20 in one league. And you think about it, because the Diamond Baseball Holdings, you can go look them up, but they own 11 of the 20 teams in the International League, which is one level below Major League Baseball. And they will obviously say, look, well, you can quite clearly see how this works. And certainly within ice hockey, teams don't
have multiple ownership within the same league, but you of course have multiple teams owned by one entity. A lot of NHL teams own their AHL affiliates, for example, and there are ways of making some of these bits and pieces work. Certainly from a European perspective, because of course it wouldn't fly in Germany, it wouldn't fly in France, because this is a perspective thing about where sport comes from. Sport in America has always been on that business franchise model, whereas in Europe, our sport has always been born out of recreation from or for groups of people. So sports clubs were not founded to make money. They were founded years and years ago to be things that people went and had fun doing. And yes, there is a business of sport, and boy, are we going to talk about that momentarily. But there is also a real issue with the fact that, for a lot of people, this is something that they cannot square the circle of. Unfortunately for those people, British hockey and the people who run British hockey have already squared that circle. The Nell family own 3 teams in the national division. We've had multiple instances in the top leagues in Britain over the different eras of singular entities owning multiple teams. So the people who run it can get their heads around it. Now, ultimately, you can have a situation where you have certain collective operations done together, and the clubs are the actual on ice and other bits and pieces on the ground where they are can be done differently, and it is a different thing. Actually, Tom Graves made an interesting point about the baseball thing. The difference with the International League thing is the players and coaches are employed exclusively by the respective MLB organisations. This is very true, and it maybe that's my bad, maybe in that sense that it wasn't the greatest of, it wasn't the greatest example to use in that sense. So apologies on that one on my for my part. But sorry, getting back to it, there is a way to do this. The question is that British hockey does not always, even within its own fan base, have a massive amount of goodwill to be trusted to do these things well, and I think there is an issue there that comes with that. We go forward onto the weekend, and of course the really, really big news, and we will touch again on it in a little bit, is that we have another league champion fully decided. Literally walked off with the title Saturday night. Saw the Swindon Wildcats finally get themselves over the line. An overtime win at Ice Sheffield against the Steel Dogs means that Aaron Nell will finish his playing career as a National Division champion. Now, Swindon, not obviously a million miles removed from their last league title win, the South One Championship in 1819, where in that gap between the EPL collapsing and the National Division becoming a thing that existed. So Swindon had not won a national title in that sort of sense, not in the same way that you could argue maybe Basingstoke did in 1718, because Basingstoke won South One, but then also won the national playoffs when in the sort of the north-south NIHL split as it was. Swindon won the league, but didn't win the playoffs. Hull obviously won the playoffs that year in what was one of the most bonkers finals at Coventry we've ever seen. Swindon then, when the National Division was formed, second to Telford in the first season, second to Telford in the second season, and finally got themselves back over the line. The team that for so long everybody talked about being so good on paper that couldn't get the job done has finally managed to find a way to get the job done. The Cup is obviously going somewhere else, and it really does look like, especially given Leeds' roster situation right now, that the Cup is likely going to find its way back to Ice Sheffield. Slava Kulikov will again win a knockout competition but miss out on the league. But either way, we should say congratulations to Aaron Nell, to Lee Richardson, to Sam Bullas, and to everybody at the Wildcats for wrapping up the title as they did before March had even begun. And of course done without Ben O'Connor for a large chunk of this recently, and will not have Ben O'Connor going forward because, as we know, he is out for the remainder of the season. Had surgery the other day. We wish him well with that. We will see Ben O'Connor back for 26-27 and the Cats league title defence. And then we had the other day, and we had the news out of the Elite League office that should the Coventry Blaze make the Challenge Cup final, the Challenge Cup final will not be held at the Skydome. It will be held at the Motorpoint in Nottingham, and it looks like the Coventry Blaze at the moment are on course to qualify for the Challenge Cup final. Now, the rules said that whoever was the top seed heading into the final would host the final. And the issue, of course, is that if the Coventry Blaze qualify, again, and they would be playing the Nottingham Panthers, they are the higher seed. And by rights, by the rules that they've said, at the beginning of the season, the Coventry Blaze should be hosting the Challenge Cup final at the Sky Dome. Now let's get up the press release from the Elite League very quickly on this. Yes, Dave, we will talk about that in a little bit because I'm just going to pull up this press release. If you've not seen it, firstly, you've been living under a rock. But let's just quickly go through this. The Elite League board, comprised of representatives from all 10 member clubs, agreed earlier this season on a number of venue requirements for the 2026 Challenge Cup final in order to ensure the league's showpiece event is delivered at a venue that meets capacity, broadcast and event presentation needs. As part of those discussions, all clubs agreed that if required, the final could be staged at a venue capable of meeting those criteria while preserving the competitiveness of the competition through the designation of home and away status in line with seeding following the group stage. This decision was agreed in advance of final games of the Challenge Cup group stage being played. With this scenario now a possibility, the board has confirmed that should Coventry Blaze reach the 2026 Challenge Cup final, the game will be hosted at the Motorpoint Arena in Nottingham. In this scenario, Coventry would retain full home team status for the final, including last change and choice of benches, ensuring the competitive advantage earned through their seeding is preserved while enabling the event to be delivered at a venue suited to an occasion of this scale. If Belfast make the final, the game will be held at the SSE Arena. In either Belfast or Nottingham, an allocation of tickets will be held for fans of the visiting team. Further ticketing details will be communicated when the final lineup for the final is set. Now, there are a bunch of things, and the Elite League have been absolutely roasted for this decision. And I think there's something to be said. Will they have seen it? Yes. Will they listen to it? Is a separate question for another time. Now, the big issue with this is that ultimately everybody operated under the premise, because it was said at the start of the season, that whoever was the highest seed going into the final would host it. And then a day before the second leg of the other semi-final, which, remember, we should have already had the second leg of the semi-final between Belfast and Coventry, because we know what happened. The Blaze were unable to travel over. The issue here is timing, because ultimately the Elite League runs itself. They make their own decisions. The board, which is made up of the representatives of the members, makes their decisions. If this decision was made before the end of the Challenge Cup group stage, why was it not said then? There is my question, and there is the thing that I ponder out loud. Because ultimately, the criticism from there's a bunch of criticism that people have put out. Firstly, the biggest criticism is that you said the higher seed gets it, in Coventry are the higher seed, they should be hosting at the Sky Dome. The Sky Dome, of course, has hosted GB Internationals. Will host again the National Division Playoff Finals weekend in April, and it's apparently not worthy of a showcase event when it already hosts showcase events, which is a circle that square people can't circle and circle people can't square right now. The bigger issue, I think, that some people have had, or at least the other sort of underlying issue people have had, is that if you want to host the final in a neutral venue, which the Challenge Cup has had before, it was hosted in Cardiff for a couple of years. If you want to host it in a neutral venue, then you have to host it in a neutral venue, because with all due respect to Nottingham, and obviously the Motorpoint is a fantastic arena to host anything. Host the playoff weekend. It is a model of what we would love to have in every big city in Great Britain in terms of having ice hockey coverage, right? Having a rink, having a venue of that quality to be able to host games in. None of us can really argue on the basis of a thing of saying we're going to host the Challenge Cup final in Nottingham. Not an issue there. But when you have said that the higher seed gets it, the incentive for any team not playing in an arena to win or to progress in the Challenge Cup, the criticism some people have had is that this now falls away. Where is the incentive for Coventry, for Guildford, for Manchester, for Fife, for Dundee, for those teams to really push on in the Challenge Cup? Because ultimately now, they were told, if this had happened at the beginning of the season, and you suddenly get to this point now, what would happen in that point? What happens there? Because ultimately, you take that away, you take that incentive away. Say at the beginning of the season, Challenge Cup finals at the Utilita in Sheffield, no one bats an eyelid. because ultimately, if everybody knows what they're playing for, the FA Cup, right? The FA Cup final is in the same place every year. Bar the Wembley got rebuilt. Everybody knew they were going to the Millennium in Cardiff. But if you take part in the FA Cup, you know what the end game is. Take part in the FA Trophy, you know what the end game is. FA Vase, which one of the local teams actually from around me here in Southampton, AFC Stoneham, are not too far away from now. You know that Wembley is the end goal. There's no issue with having a final of your cup competition or any competition not on your home ice. The problem is that if you are playing under the impression that you will get that ability to do so, and then that is taken away. And I think there is a lesson to be learned from all concerned, that decision has to be made. But also as well, the idea that Nottingham, who are now the lower seed, because with all the will in the world, having last change doesn't make a huge difference when the entire building is going to be with the other team. I also feel very, very sad for a lot of my Coventry supporting friends, because they thought they were on course for getting a final. And let's not forget, for a long time in the history of the Elite League, the Coventry Blaze were not just a good organisation, they were the organisation. 2004, 2005 Grand Slam winners, multiple league champions, multiple playoffs, multiple cups. Like the Coventry Blaze in the post their bit where they owned Hull, and that kind of really knackered their finances a bit, it's been a different kettle of fish, and the Blaze have not been the force they once were. Arguably kind of like the Nottingham Forest of the top tier of British hockey. But the Coventry Blaze are a proud organisation with a proud fan base that knows their hockey, and they thought they were getting something that's then been taken away from them. And I think there's something to be said for an apology to those people, because I think that's the bigger issue with this one, is this has been agreed and the rug has been pulled out from underneath a lot of people. And I think there's something to be said again for, you can make a decision that will be unpopular because you think it is right, because you're in charge of running your own ship. That is fine, but you do at least have to say sorry for it. And I think I think that's probably where those things kind of stick in my craw. Some people think this is a good decision. I can see both sides, but I think personally, I find it strange that you would announce this at the time they have. I think that's the bigger issue. If they decided like a week in, actually, you know what, we can get a really good date for the finals we played at Cardiff. Can we do that? Should we do that instead? And all the teams go, actually, you know what, yeah, let's do that. That's a different kettle of fish. But if it's been announced before the end of the group stage, been decided before the end of the group stage, it really should have been announced before the end of the group stage. And then you do not have a raft of very upset, very, very cross people. Because again, the big issue sometimes British hockey has with itself is that it will make decisions, but just doesn't. It drops the brick into the pond and doesn't think of where the brick is landing. And unfortunately, this time it hasn't just caused splash; it has landed on one of the koi carp, and I think that's a real shame. I think that's one of those. It's one of those things. Ultimately, they're about to have to face down a bit of an issue, because the Coventry Blaze are 3-1 to the good in the second leg with 20 minutes to play. And we are about to find out what is going on. We're about to see what kind of backlash will come from Blaze fans across the spectrum, if you'll pardon the pun. Nottingham 3, Dundee 1. Thank you to Mark for updating us on that one. A third goal has gone in. Nolan Volcan on the board just before the end. Oh no, it's 4-1 now? You said 3-1? What have I done? Game sheet. No, it is 4. Who scored the fourth goal? Ross Armour. Ross Armour has scored a fourth goal for the Nottingham Panthers. Let's have a quick look at the chat before we start talking about results, because we've already gone through half an hour and talking about bits and pieces. So apologies on that. We will smash through the results momentarily, but there was a lot to talk about. Eating Mr. Russell, it's Rossi. Totally off topic. When do the NZIHL and AIHL start? AIHL will start April. I can't remember the date of the first game off the top of my head. It's usually around playoff weekend, so it will either be the last weekend of the group stage or will be playoff finals weekend itself, Rossi. NZIHL usually starts a little bit later. It'll be towards the back end of April, beginning of May for the NZ. What I don't get with Fife is what their owners are getting out this whole thing. Pass. The joy of owning a sports team. See KSI buying into Dagenham and Redbridge. Where would a good neutral venue be for the Challenge Cup final? Cardiff or Sheffield? I mean, for the two teams there are, I mean, either if you're having a Coventry Nottingham final, which is what we look like we're staring down, either's as good. I think at this point. GB under 18s in April. Leeds are going to be seriously short benched in Coventry. Potentially they've got to make it first, and there'll be the issue there. Swindon have been the most consistent team in the NIHL. Certainly in the national division. I don't think we can argue across the entire NIHL. I think Sutton and Peterborough would probably have Peterborough too would have a few words about that. Quite nice that the OT winner on Saturday ended up being Jones from Malazinski, given they're two of the longer serving players. I'm just surprised Chris Jones didn't fall over in the process. Sorry, Chris, but I couldn't resist that one. The fact it's an unusual venue is stupid, says Tom. What would they have done had the final ended up being Coventry versus Guildford? Yeah, that's Cardiff. It 100% would have probably ended up in Cardiff. I think is probably the answer there, Tom. If you had a Coventry versus Guildford Challenge Cup final, because I venture Cardiff would fall under the requisite bits and pieces if they're saying that there's a minimum requirement for stuff, because if Coventry doesn't meet it, unfortunately I don't think Guildford would either, but Cardiff would be the logical place there, easy to get to for both teams, relatively easy to get to for fans as well. The question of course is that who broadcasts this, because like if you have a final in Cardiff, for example, so let's take this Coventry Guildford example in Cardiff, with all due respect to to Dan and Greg who do the Devils commentary, it's not a Devils event. It's an Elite League event. So who would they get? Would they get Aaron Murphy to do it? Coventry versus Guildford. Do you get Ed and Stu? Do you get me? Do you get all of us? What do you do in that circumstance? Hypotheticals to play out in our brains later, I believe. The decision shows the Elite League is the top four and not the rest. Everyone plays to the arena team's tune. It's their way or no way. It's certainly a very, very popular opinion amongst a lot of the fan bases at the moment. Jamie, it should be said. I think I saw Ian Robertson, father of Callie, talked about that teams should potentially look at doing something else and leaving the arena teams to it. I think there's something to be said for the fact that you need to have, in any league, you will have haves and have-nots. That is the nature of sport, irrespective. But I think there's something to be said for some of the decisions, yes. But I also think, like I say, as ever with British hockey, the biggest issue, one of the biggest issues with British hockey at any level is its communication. And I think there's the issue there in that this is a decision that has been made, but it's been poorly communicated. And I think there's that's the thing. You've got a lot of upset people. I think this could have been avoided, and I think there's probably the issue there. Obviously, it's a hard job to do, because again, this is not going to be a popular decision, right? Especially given what's happened the last couple of years, where Belfast effectively got to keep hosting the Challenge Cup final because they were always the highest seed. And you can make those decisions, and like I say, anywhere you go, people will have to make unpopular decisions. However, you got to do it there are ways to avoid some of the backlash, and I think hopefully there will be lessons learned about the communication of that going forward, because I think there's something to be said about being, about how it's been done, because there are clearly a lot of very, very upset people, and I 100% sympathise with that. Why not Sheffield as a neutral venue? I mean, the issue, of course, for a place like Sheffield, more so than Cardiff, because of course the Devils operate Cardiff. Sheffield is a multi-purpose venue that has a bunch of different things going on. So you could say, let's do it there, and you'll get bumped for I insert music artist I don't know the name of here because I don't listen to pop music, kind of thing. So yeah, there's a bunch. The thing Jamie points out there as well about it being the top four and everybody else plays to their tune. But a lot of people would say the same thing about the national. We'll talk about the Nellopoly. Or Steve Nell runs the league kind of thing. So whatever level you go to, you'll end up with those kind of things. Either way, let's have a quick bash through the results as the games are ongoing. We will see what happens. Let's go back to last Friday. 2 games, of course. In the Elite League last Friday night, the Belfast Giants keep striding towards the league title, even if the Challenge Cup may now seemingly be slightly beyond their grasp. But the Giants with a 3-1 win over the Steelers, an empty net goal into the bargain off of that one for the Giants, but they take a huge step towards retaining their league crown. And then, well, a bit of pride from the Dundee Stars as they managed to beat the Coventry Blaze at the DIA. The Blaze looking a bit tired and a bit lethargic in this one, as they had the long trip up to Dundee and then get beaten by Mark Lefebvre's side. And ultimately, like I say, it does look like Dundee are going to miss the playoffs in the grand scheme of things. But 2 points are 2 points, can't argue with it. Into Saturday, and well, something of a surprise. Guildford were 2-0 up at the Sky Dome before coming back. But then, well, Marcus Teesing had to wait 130 days between goals and has now got 2 game winners inside 10 days. Um, so fair play for the Elite League's leading shot blocker. But either way, a good start for the Flames on Saturday night in Coventry with a 3-2 win. Cardiff with a shutout win over the Five Flyers, 5-0 down at the Vindico. Glasgow win the Scottish battle. They return Dundee back down to earth with a 7-2 victory. And Manchester nearly solved Nottingham again. The Storm did beat the Panthers 5-1 not too long ago in the Storm Shelter and led this game for quite some time. But eventually Chase Pearson with the equalising goal just before the end, and an OT winner for the Panthers from Mitch Fossier gets them the extra point from Saturday night. Into Sunday, and well, a huge dent in any title chance for the Cardiff Devils as they travelled up to the Utilita. They were 4-0 down before too long, and the Steelers eventually winning out by 5-1. A shutout in his final game as a Belfast Giant for Alexi Gravel. He has now left Belfast and returned to the East Coast League. Will be suiting up for the South Carolina Stingrays going forward, but he leaves off of the back of a 3-0 victory in Kirkcaldy. Manchester got only get the 1 point out of the weekend. They end up losing at home to the Glasgow Clan by 4-2. And then there was the game I was at. You can read about over at bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, which was the 2-1 victory for the Flames over the Nottingham Panthers. Matt Alvaro with a 5-on-3 power play goal, which was cancelled out by Matt Marcy in his fantastic bit of play off the back of a Chase Pearson pass. And then Josh Waller in his 400th Elite League game seals the deal for the Flames. They come out of it with a 4-point weekend. That means the Elite League table as it stands looks like this. And as you can see, the Giants, 8 points clear with a game in hand over the Steelers, 9 points clear of the Devils, 10 points clear of Nottingham. At the moment, bar a minor miracle, it does look like if the Giants can hold serve, they will walk back towards the Elite League title. Manchester in 5th are the other team guaranteed of a playoff spot as it stands. Guildford, as I say, will qualify for the playoffs if Dundee do not win against Nottingham tonight. And then Coventry and Glasgow are the other teams on the inside looking out. As you can see, Dundee and Fife quite a way off the pace. Fife, I believe, are very close to mathematical elimination. Could even potentially be so. I would double check that in the coming days. Into the fixtures then, as we talk about in the league, Nottingham and Dundee are playing right now. 2 games on Friday night. Guildford with a long trip up to the Braehead Arena to take on Glasgow. Manchester will take on Dundee at the Storm Shelter. Into Saturday, there is where you can find me on Saturday evening. Flames TV, 6 p.m. face-off. We will be live from about 5:55 for the Guildford Flames and the Fife Flyers. We will see what Mike Courts can do with his side. Fife, of course, beating Guildford up in Kirkcaldy in one of Jamie Russell's last games in charge. Can the Flames get a measure of revenge? Dundee and Manchester meet at the DIA. Nottingham take on Glasgow. Sheffield versus Coventry at the Utilita. Belfast versus Cardiff in the first of their double header. They will play the second game at the SSE on Sunday. Fife will take on Sheffield on Sunday, and then a preview potentially, give it a few more minutes, of what could be the Challenge Cup final. Coventry, Nottingham at the Sky Dome. We'll then head into the National Division. Just one game from last Friday night. The back and forth battle in the southwest, where it was a surprising starting goal for Harry Thomas, and it went all over the place. But eventually, the Wildcats got the win that they needed, 6-5 in overtime at home against the Bristol Pitbulls, which set up destiny on Saturday at Ice Sheffield. And you can see it there, slap bang in the middle. Sheffield Steeldogs 2, Swindon Wildcats 3. Chris Jones from Tomasz Malazinski will stand as the championship winning goal that saw the Swindon Wildcats over the line to the National Division title for 25-26. Basingstoke held on at home against the depleted Leeds side to get a 4-3 victory over the night. MK battered Peterborough in their resurgence under Lewis Christie. Hull kept their winning run going. This was 9 on the bounce. They won by 4-2 away at the Shark Tank against Solway. And then Telford and Romford decided to, why bother? Because why defend when you cannot defend? Telford 8, Romford 6 on Saturday night in Shropshire. Into Sunday, and the Bison couldn't do the double. Leeds getting a measure of revenge as those two sides split the points across the weekend. 4-2 Knights with the victory in that one. Bristol and Solway met down at the Pound, and again, why defend when you cannot defend? As Bristol go to OT for the second time in 3 days, and also more goals, because goals and goals. But this time the Pitbulls come out on the other end of the scoreline, winning by 7-6. Jake Bricknell has now scored 100 goals in National Division play. MK's good run continued down at the Sapphire, a 4-1 victory over the Romford Raiders. Hull made it 10 on the spin. Steel Dogs having a bad night on Saturday as the title slipped out of their grasp. They then lost at the World's Most Versatile Arena by 5-3. And also as well with the news that Alexi Haskainen has signed on for the Seahawks for 26-27. Massive news for the Birds, as they have clearly found their man they want between the pipes. And Telford, well, they remembered how to defend this time and managed to do the business in regulation against Peterborough. The Phantoms' slightly wonky form as ever continues as we head towards the postseason. They drop points and get a 0-point weekend off the back of losing 5-4 at home to the Tigers. And so there's the thing everybody wanted to see, especially if you're from the southwest and you wear red and white. The Swindon Wildcats confirmed as the champions. They cannot be caught by the Sheffield Steel Dogs or by anybody else. But the part we now can see that we have 7 of 8 playoff places confirmed. Swindon, Sheffield, Hull, Leeds, Peterborough, Telford and MK will all play in the postseason in the National Division. At the moment, it's the Romford Raiders in the driving seat for that 8th and final spot. But Solway, Bristol and Basingstoke, who still have a game in hand, are not going to go quietly, albeit the Bison really could do with scoring a lot more goals than they have done. But we will see what happens. With 6 games left, who will take that final spot? Very much Romford in the driving seat, but it remains to be seen. Fixtures-wise, we know, and thanks as ever to Max Van Mullen. Max has asked me to tell you there is in the fixture graphics for the National Division, there is a bit of an Easter egg that he's put into it. See if you can spot it over the next 3 slides. Friday night, though, another big game, a 2 home game weekend again for the Bison. They start on Friday night with the visit of the Solway Sharks. Leeds take on Sheffield in the Battle of Yorkshire. And then into Saturday, what could be is a huge game in that race for the playoffs. Basingstoke versus Romford at Planet Ice Basingstoke. Absolutely huge, a must-win, as if the whole weekend was a must-win for the Bison. This one definitely is, as well as Saturday night. Bristol take on MK. Hull look to make it 11 on the spin against the Peterborough Phantoms. Solway versus Telford, and then the Nell Classico at the Link Centre. The new champs versus the old champs. Swindon versus Leeds. And then into Sunday, just the 4 games on the docket, but the Bison in action again. They are away at the Romford Raiders. MK take on Bristol. Peterborough take on Swindon. And Sunday night, 6:30 p.m. in Shropshire, Telford Tigers versus the Hull Seahawks. Hull getting Heiskanen for a full season could be problematic for the rest of the league, that's for sure. Ooh, let's get this up there. Sorry, skipped a few bits there. Question for you to get. Question for when you get to Hull. Have you watched Heiskanen play yet? Would like to hear your opinion on him in comparison with other netminders in the Elite League. So the issue here, Rossi, is less about the quality of him as a netminder, but the quality of shot that he's facing. Because the big difference between the Elite League and the National Division in terms of some of the bits and pieces, because hockey is hockey, right? I find all hockey entertaining. I'm the worst person for this, and I refuse to live in a bubble of one league or the other. But the issue for him is how well he do against elite league shooters, because Hull have obviously got some guys that have played elite league. Geordie Stallard, Johnny Corneal, Bobby Chamberlain's played elite league, but the ongoing quality of shot is where Heskey will have some issues if he stepped up a level. Because are there guys that will have his numbers? Absolutely not. But if I think about, because actually watching him and Justin Fazio play, there are similarities in how they approach the game, certainly in how they line themselves up and their movements. But Fazio is facing better shooters than Heskey is right now. And there would be the question for me, is what is the quality of shot that you're facing, as much as how well you are saving those shots, if you see what I mean. I want to sit down and watch more of him because he looks really good, and I'm delighted for Matty, because Matty, when he's happy, is a much easier person to deal with. Back to basics and simplifying the game. Sure work for MK. 5 straight wins. Players playing with freedom and a smile on their faces. That's what we like to see. 4-1.
4-1 Coventry, and they are clearly wanting to make a point. It looks like that's the wrong. That's the Nottingham game sheet. Anthony, well done. 4-1 in both games now, of course. Let's have a look. Who has scored the fourth goal for the Coventry Blaze? It is Alessio Luciani at 43-47, and the Coventry Blaze clearly wanted to make a statement to all and sundry as they march their way towards the Challenge Cup final. Phantoms only had 3 fit D-men this weekend. I love you, Tom Norton, but that's your problem, not ours. I wouldn't like MK in my playoff grid, to be honest. Feel like they're a bit of a sleeping giant that's come alive at the wrong time for everyone else. I mean, to be fair, I wouldn't want to play Hull either at the moment because it's momentum and motivation is a huge thing here. And Hull are motivated by having had this core group together for quite some time that's not really been able to do much in the postseason. And they're on an absolute tear right now with a goalkeeper that is playing out of his mind. Those of us older folk will remember the 2019 Hull Pirates that won the national playoffs in the North 1, South 1 split. With all due respect to Ashley Smith, possibly one of the less good netminders to win a playoff winners medal, where Hull literally had to play "we will score one more than you" because they didn't have the defence to stop a beach ball with a net. So yeah, that's a fair, that's a good one on there. You have to build from the back, and it's taken Matty a while to find a guy that he feels could really do that, because between Dimitri Zamostra and John McLaughlin, both who are capable of starting in this division, for whatever reason, with the way that Hull played this year, both from as a 5-man unit, and also what the blue line has been able to do. There is getting a guy in of Heskey's quality has just been the difference maker. Was that the green shirts? It was, Mark. It was also as well, and this is dating me and Mark, because Mark and I were sitting next together for a chunk of that final, where Peterborough hit where Ashley Smith caught the puck and dropped it onto the post. It came in and out of his glove and sat at the base of the post before being cleared away. Mark, who was in the chat, turned to me and said, "Hull are winning this now." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "If they've gotten away with that, there's no way the hockey gods are letting them lose." And Hull skated up the other end and Bobby Chamberlain scored the winner. So yeah, sorry to out you on that one, Mark, but yes, that was a time, that one. From a Swindon perspective, if MK and Hull could respectfully go to Group P, I'd be more than happy, thanks. I keep talking to you folk in Swindon, you keep telling me you're not winning the playoffs, so that's on your own head on that front. Fascinated to see how it goes, of course, in the NIHL, in the National Division playoffs. You know me, I love watching the playoffs in all stripes. I've actually just had the email again about writing for the programme for Coventry, because of course 20th anniversary season of the Coventry weekend, which is pretty awesome. So that'll be really, really good. But yes, Swindon's like, if you could just go with their players with like an easier run. But yeah, if Leeds make the playoff weekend, they have 5 members of the roster going to GB under 18s who could potentially rock up to Coventry with 13 outskaters, which would be a thing. It would be fun to watch. But yeah, it is what it is on that front. There's a lot going on, and a lot of craziness. But also as well, GB under 18 roster has come out, and we do need to say, because of course, if you haven't noticed, let's go back. Did you see the Easter egg? Did anybody catch the Easter egg in the National Division fixtures? I'll give you a moment to talk about it. Did you catch the Easter egg in the National Division fixtures graphics? Did you spot it? We'll go back to it, and I'll put it up, because it's in this one. I was remarkably sober. You were, but it was Sunday afternoon. It's in this one. Can you spot the Easter egg in the slide that for this one? Can anybody see it? I think it is, because if you notice, therefore, Max has actually, for the first time this entire season, Max has put himself on the Romford graphic. If you haven't seen it before already. But yeah, that was Max's little nod to the fact that as a Bison fan of many years playing it, and so he stuck himself in there for other bits and pieces. And of course we should say, because of course he is because we talk about the GB under 18s, and of course Max, who has been making doing the graphics for this now for quite some time, back in the GB under 18 roster, of course ended up on the 20s roster as well this year. Didn't see any ice time. But Max getting an opportunity again with GB under 18s, very pleased
to have him in our little circle. Doesn't join the chat as much as Luca does, but you know he's a busy boy. Is Max with a variety of things that he does. But it was but like I say, Max has been a joy to have involved with the bits and pieces that I do here. Massive shout out as well to his parents Eric and Tanya, who are superb people as well. But Max and everyone who's been called up for the GB under 18s, massive respect. Love you all. Good job, and like we say to our boy, thank you very much, Max, as ever. We look forward to some more graphics going forward. Let's have a quick chat though. We'll talk about the SNL before we talk about the NIHL, just because I pulled up the pictures again. 3 games on Saturday, and oh boy, one of these games is not like the others. Although I'll talk about Kilmarnock in a little bit in a second, just because I found a team in Europe that is doing worse than them. But yes, 3 games on Saturday. Whitley wanted to try and keep pace with Edinburgh and winning in overtime at the Braehead Arena against the Paisley Pirates. However, Edinburgh, well, they went and absolutely gave Kilmarnock a massive battering, 17-2 at the Galleon for the Capitals. Aberdeen winning on the road against the North Ayrshire Wild by 4-2. And then 2 games on the Sunday and back-to-back wins for Edinburgh, winning by 8-1 over at Dumfries against the Sharks. And Whitley, well, a game they needed to win really, with the Rockets hot on their tails as well. But the Rockets win at home by 5-4 against the Warriors and take the points in that one, denting Whitley's title chances and slightly increasing their own. There's the league table as it stands. The Capitals 5 points clear of the Warriors with 2 games in hand. 10 points clear of the Rockets in third. As it goes, Paisley, Kirkcaldy, Aberdeen, Solway and North Ayr are the teams in the playoffs. Kilmarnock, our friends at the bottom there. 28 games played, 28 defeats, 56 goals scored, 340 conceded for a goal difference of minus 284. 17-3 is ridiculous. Rossi, I direct you to where Kilmarnock are in that table. I just need to find this very, very quickly, just because I did send it to someone. I just need to pull the link back up, because there is a team in Romania, Sportul Studentesc, who this season went 0-28, scored 40 goals, conceded 514 goals. They have gone winless in each of the last 7 seasons. They have not won a game since 2019 in the Romanian league. Their worst ever loss in the league, they lost 33-0 to Steaua Bucharest. However, somehow, one of their players, you'll like this, folks. So I know we don't have plus minus in the national division or any of the leagues, but we do in the elite league. Robert Giovanni Rusu, 19 games in a team that has not won since 2019, ended up +1. Not sure how that happened, but fair play. 19 games ended up +1, but yes, scored 40, conceded 514 goals, which is a thing that has happened this year, which is utterly bonkers. So don't worry. If you're a Kilmarnock, like I say, we've been following Kilmarnock over the course of this year because it's been fascinating to watch. They are, of course, the last standing members of the Goose Egg Club, the only team without a competitive win across the entirety of British senior men's hockey. But yeah, there is always somebody worse off, and a team that has not won since before COVID. That's worse by quite some measure. Edinburgh to the National next year. There's some talk of it, Rossi, but nothing is confirmed. And also as well, if you're Edinburgh and you're pulling in like 2,000 people in a 2-import league, would you move up and then put in all that extra money into travel when you really don't need to? Some discussions to be had there, I think. What we will do is we will hit that button there and pull up the bits and pieces from the NIHL when it loads. There we go. Because let's have a look at Division 1 very, very quickly. There's an interesting anomaly in this one. Firstly, because as I was prepping bits and pieces for this one, Nathan, who some of you, my son, came over and had a look, and when I explained to him that Jake Witkowski is 57 goals, 58 assists in 31 games, his response was, "That's a lot." Out of the mouths of babes. Either way, D-side win on the big pad at the Motor Point against the Nottingham Lions. Although shout out, to Nottingham netminder Evan Coles, who made 45 saves on 50 shots, which is pretty impressive all things considered, but also got an assist. So fair play. Not the greatest day, because nobody likes losing. However, not the worst outing he will ever have in a hockey jersey ever, you think. Hull beat Blackburn and didn't send Joe their game sheet. So, cheers, Hull. As we scoot on down. Goals galore at the Castle on Saturday evening between Knights 2 and the Solihull Barons. Solihull coming out with the 8-5 wins. The Knights' playoff chances are starting to slip ever further away. They came within touching distance. They were 3-2 up, but just couldn't hold on. The strength of the Barons just a little bit too much for the Knights 2 on at the end of it. 5 different goal scorers though for Knights 2. Ollie Wagg, Tom Palmer, Helgi Bjarnason, Jason Burgess and Frankie O'Sullivan with goals for Knights 2. The Barons, 2 goals apiece for Dan Malkai and Louis Allen. Other goals coming from Henry Adams, Phil Malkai, Jake Riley, who had a 4.9, and Tyler Nixon. I just want to check something actually. Let's scoot up. Frankie O'Sullivan has got to be on a decent amount of goals. Was he on 14 goals? That's not bad. Not bad for a sort of a 16-year-old. And then into the Sunday, where the Knights got some points back on the board against the Sheffield Scimitars, who, of course, as we know, were long gone from the playoff race in North 1. But either way, the Knights getting a much-needed win. They beat the Scimitars by 6-1. Ben Cutts with the lone Scimitars goal. Frankie O'Sullivan now up to 16 goals, 2 on the night for him, as well as 2 for Tom Palmer. The other goals coming from Tom Dermott and Sam McIntyre. Well, Hull didn't get a game sheet from Saturday because they didn't send it in, but we will have all the detail of their defeat over in Queensferry on Sunday as the Cup winners put their very much to the sword. D-side 8, Hull 2, a final score. More goals for Jack Witkowski, up to 58 now on the year, because fine. He's also now at 61 assists because he's just a Mickey take at that level, really, isn't he? 35 shots as well for the Dragons in this one, and managed to come out of it with 8 goals, which, as you can see though, Hull travelling a little bit short. 2 goals for Colin Cromie, a hat-trick for Ross Kennedy, the other goals coming from Jake Witkowski, Matty Barlow and Theo Malone, of course, on his 2-way with Hull, making some really big impression and getting some big minutes over in North Wales for the Dragons. Belfast with a goal back, 4-2. Which is what they want. Which is what Belfast want, to give themselves a little bit of hope. It is the hope that kills, obviously, but we will just quickly refresh that. It's only just gone in by the look of it. Let's just quickly pull up the game sheet. It is Ryan Smith with the goal for the Giants to keep them in the in the running in that game, although it does feel like it might be getting a little bit beyond them. Kieran Beech's 400th game for the Jets. Sure, it was 5 different scorers. Nice result. Yeah, I mean, fair play, but still send your game sheets into Joe so we can get them on the wonderful box scores. Of course, if you like these documents, NIHLstats.wordpress.com. But yeah, goals for the Jets. Josh Yeardley and Ethan Daintith with the goals for the Jets in that one. As Phil Pearson gets into a game for the first time in a little while, giving Tyler Della Patusha rests. Blackburn then decided to make a point against Billingham and give them an ever-loving kicking. Do go check out the Billingham Stars podcast with Craig, Carroll and Jono for more thoughts on this one in depth. But yes, another big win, and the league champs making a point after the game against Hull. A hat-trick on the night for Liam Charnock. The other goals coming from Jakob Hayek, Matt Gross, Tom Barry and Bobby Streetley. The lone Billingham Stars goal coming from Callum Wilkinson. And then, well, it did go into overtime. And Widnes had an absolute disaster before giving themselves a chance, before losing it at the end. Telford were 5-0 up after 13 minutes and 16 seconds, and this game went to overtime. As you can see there, 5-0 in the first period. Tom Byrne, 2 from Tyler Summerton, a goal from Vladimir Luka and a goal from Kyle Watt had the Tigers well in front before the Tigers then switched off. Alex Parry, Flynn Massey, Andrew Hopkins, another from Massey, and a game-tying goal with 18 seconds left from Michael Gilbert got the Wilder point, but then, because he breaks everybody's hearts eventually, a 55th goal of the season from Vladimir Luka gets the extra point for the Telford Tigers in this one. There's our boy Luca, 6 goals on 57 shots, 51 saves. Matt Byrne concedes 5 goals on 23. So if nothing else, Widnes, we do love a bit of efficiency into the bargain. And then, well, a tight one that again went to overtime. Solihull squeaked their way past the Nottingham Lions on the small pad at the NIC. Solihull 4-3 down inside the last 10 minutes. Lucas Price with the late game tying goal on that one before Phil Mulcahy with the game winner for the Barons. Jack Croston, Toby Fisher, Ewan Woodward, and Charles Owen with the goals for the Lions in this one. Solihull's goals, 2 from Mulcahy, 1 from Nicholas Otters and 1 from Lucas Price, and the other from Dan Mulcahy into the bargain. As you can see there, Harvey Kembry, 5 goals on 52 shots. Again, not a terrible night, all things considered. A few games this upcoming weekend and a rare Friday night game in North 1, 7:30 p.m. this Friday. Telford 2 versus Leeds 2 to kick off the weekend in North 1. 3 games on Saturday. Telford versus Solihull in Shropshire on Saturday night. Widnes versus Billingham. Leeds versus Hull. And then into Sunday, Hull will take on Deeside at the World's Most Versatile Arena. Nottingham versus Blackburn, which will always go well because those two sides absolutely adore each other, and Solihull versus Leeds. As we look at the league table in North 1, as we know, the Blackburn Hawks already confirmed as the league champions, and then only 2 playoff spots left to lock up at the moment. The Scimitars are out. It's 3 teams for 2 spots, albeit it does feel like the Knights too are going to have to really run the table to get away with this one. Blackburn, Deeside, Telford, Solihull, Billingham and Hull locked into the playoffs. Widnes, do you think will eventually qualify for too long? It's can the Knights catch the Lions will be the big question in North 1. Into South 1, and before anybody says anything and worries about Max, he was backing up Romford on Saturday. He's backing up the Raiders on Saturday evening, so he was not in net for this one. But yeah, Streatham went over to Essex and gave the Buccaneers a bit of a kicking. Romford eventually getting a goal later on in the piece through Nils Maskelyne. But yeah, Streatham making a point and just wanting to, after their loss in the cup final, trying to make a point about going for the league title hammer and tongs. We'll just quickly scroll down so we can get all the goals here. 2 hat-tricks for the Redhawks in this one. 1 for Luke Brittle, the other for Danny Ingoldsby. 2 goals for Jared Lane, the other goals coming from Ryan Watt, Dan Rose and Alan Lack. As we look there, both Owen Ryder and yes, Tom Adams back for the Romford Buccaneers. Danny Milton faces only 21 shots in net for Streatham in this one. And a big sizable win at home, trying to get a bit of momentum ahead of the playoffs for the Swindon Wildcats too. They beat the Invicta Dynamos by 3-2 at the Link Centre on Saturday night as the big club were winning the league title. And Jan Kostel Sr. and Jan Kostel Jr. with all of the goals. Kostel on the score sheet for the Wildcats in this one. 2 goals for Dad, 1 goal for Son. Aaron Connolly and Ashley Jackson with the Dynamos goals in this one. Ben Clark-Leach with 38 saves, of course, announced today is now being on a 2-way with the Belfast Giants, with the Giants netminding situation a little in flux with the injury to Jackson Whistle, a British netminder who can step in between the pipes. Clearly not a terrible thing to have should he be needed. Nikolai Deval getting the full 60 minutes for the Dynamos in that one. Into Sunday then, and a bit of a closer game for the Buccaneers, all things considered. Max was in goal for this one, but a 5-2 loss for Romford away down on the south coast against the Solent Devils. A much needed win for the Devils. It's been a very, very tough year for Alex Murray's side with injuries. Alex Wicks and Cole McCluskey with the Buccaneers goals in this one. Jack Peacock, Charlie Wedge, Dan Lackey, Chris Necrosavicius and Alex Murray with the goals for the Devils in this one. Adam Max Dukes, I didn't double check his numbers. 55 saves on 60 shots. I think we can take that. 30 off the 32 for the ASCAT Aaron Taylor between the pipes for the Devils. And then a huge one with title implications in South 1 on the line, and a game that Streatham needed to win, but when they do, Dan Rose's late goal, the thing that separates the Streatham Redhawks and the Chelmsford Chieftains on the night. Chieftains goals coming from Cam Bartlett, Sasha Maltsev, and the second of the night from Bartlett. Harvey Stead, Jared Lane, and Danny Ingoldsby with the other goals before Dan Rose gets the winner for Ben Painter's side. But Slough being Slough, find a way. Swindon run them close in their second home game of the weekend, and we're 2-0 up as well going into the third period. But Slough, good teams find a way is the only thing to say on that one. Alfie Goddard and Tom Ashmore with the goals for the Wildcats too. 2 goals from Juha Lindgren and a late game winner from someone who's on a 2-way with the Swindon Wildcats first team. Jacob Minter with the goal to break Wildcats to hearts and keep Slough in a good position at the top of the table. In their 10th anniversary game, the Cardiff Fire couldn't find a way past Invicta Dynamo, so congratulations to everybody down in Cardiff Bay on a decade of existence and survival. We wish all of you the very best heading into the playoffs, because that's certainly going to be a tough one for those guys. But the Dynamos, with the 3 points on their long journey across from Kent can play well. Aaron Connolly, a hat-trick as well from Mads Toon, getting the points for the Dynamos in this one. Craig Thurston and Joe Malfatti with the goals for the hosts as they celebrated at the weekend. 3 games on Saturday, 3 games on Sunday in South 1. Solent versus Romford, again down on the south coast. At 5 o'clock at Gosport. Slough versus Chelmsford at the Hangar, 6:30 p.m. on Saturday. If you're at a loose end and you don't fancy watching Guildford with Fife with me, you might want to have a think about going to that one, because that one's going to be a cracker. And then a battle of the capitals: Wales versus England, Cardiff Fire, Streatham Redhawks, 6:45 down in the Bay. Then Sunday, the local derby, Chelmsford versus Romford at 6 p.m. at the Riverside. Streatham versus Slough in the league. Again, another huge title implications on this one on Sunday. A 6 p.m. face-off on the High Road. Be interested if that doesn't change to 6:45. But a second home game of the weekend for the Cardiff Fire. They will welcome the Solent Devils across to Cardiff Bay. There's the league as it stands. Streatham with a game in hand can only get themselves up to 55 points with that game in hand, so they need to find a way to get a maximum out of this weekend. Chelmsford 4 points back of the Jets, having played the same number of games. You can see they're at the bottom. The Fire just 2 points, a whole 21 points behind Solent, who are still below Romford. They have a game in hand. The win over the Buccaneers would lift the Devils back into 6th. So it's just pausing, so you need some water on this one. 5-1 Dundee. Well, there we go. Blimey, talking about that. Which netmind are you talking about there, Mark? Blimey. So Carson Tawinski has scored another goal for Belfast, and Jack Hopkins has scored a goal for the Coventry Blaze at 56:04. It does feel like everybody's going to be everyone's going to have a bit of a wobble. And apologies everybody, I had completely missed that because I was so focused on Jake Kupski being in net that Ben Clark-Leach is on the bench tonight for Belfast. Fair play. They needed a British backup and they decided to reward technically the last person to play in goal for GB. Does that make Ben Clark-Leach GB's number 1? Question for another day. Either way, awesome to see. Crazy game to get yourself into there, Ben. All things considered, but yeah, crazy. Yes, BCL really is a goalkeeper. He's ridiculous. Yes, Ben Clark-Leach is ridiculous. He's had the year of all years, it must be said. North 2. And again, if you were travelling with the Swindon Wildcats fans on Saturday evening up to West Sheffield, you would have got to see a bit of the end of this, given when you turned up. But a pretty comfortable win for the Sutton Sting against one of the lower end sides. As you can see, Bradford have only won 2 games all year against Sutton, who have 2 overtime wins compared to the 18 regulation ones. Comfortable win for the Sting. They beat the Bulldogs by 9 goals to 3. Goals for the Sting in this one. 5 goals on the night from Morgan Glasby. People talk about players who should maybe try have a crack at another level. There's one for you. 2 for Ryan Apsley. And the other goals from Connor Medley and Elliot Meadows. Goals for the Bulldogs, 2 for Paul Lane. The other coming from Jared Knowles in that one. The Billingham Buccaneers and the Coventry NIHL Blaze. Buccaneers won 5-2, but again, they've not sent in their game sheet, so we're not going to talk about them. You don't help out Joe, we won't help out you. The second game, though, on Sunday, of course, has caused a little bit of perturbation because of the brawl that ended up happening. Nottingham were 3-0 up before they ended up throwing everything away, and ended up losing thanks to a Sam Dowd overtime winning goal. And you can see there, 59-21, it all kicked off just a little bit as people were thrown out. Darryl Clark leaving the bench, and of course it's resulted in one of the Nottingham 2 players being released. Tyler Poole released after butt-ending somebody in the face from standing on the bench, which is unsavoury to say the least, it should be said. Either way, you think these two, if they ever get a chance when it comes to next year, a few receipts to be kept. Josh Nertney, Sam Down with the OT winner, Lewis Hall and Artem Pavlov with the goals for the Buccaneers. Goals for Lions 2 coming from Charlie Davenport, Adam Clark and Harrison Meyer in this one. And well, Coventry we didn't get anything for them on Saturday, but we can talk about their Sunday game, and a strange one, winning 2-0 over the Kingston Sharks. Normally, and in a game that only had one penalty that came in the third period. Max Parham and Charles Coney with the goals for the Coventry NHL Blaze. A 15-shot shutout for Owen Chester as James Adamson makes 59 saves on 61 shots. Little bit of a one-way traffic on this one, it feels like. Either way, that was it from North 2 this weekend, and not much, a little bit of action this coming weekend. One game in the Challenge Cup, that's on Sunday between Billingham and Altrincham. League-wise, Altrincham versus Nottingham on Saturday, as well as Coventry versus Sutton. That, a potential banana skin there for Sutton. Coventry, not a team to be trifled with. Into Sunday, midday face-off at the world's most versatile arena for the Kingston Sharks. They take on D-Side 2. Bradford at home, can they get a win against the Coventry NHL Blaze? As the league table stands in League 2, it is pretty much a two-horse race between Bradford and Nottingham for that last playoff spot. Bradford have 2 games in hand on Nottingham, so very much a possibility that the Bulldogs could still make the playoffs. Sutton have a game in hand over Sheffield and a 5-point advantage. It's pretty much a two-horse race for the title, but it is very much, at the moment, Sutton's to lose. Into South 2, and after losing to them the weekend before, revenge for the Solent Junior Devils against the Lee Valley Lions at Gosport on Saturday. 2 goals from Charlie Wedge, a goal from Jason Coles. Yep, that Jason Coles. Jason Coles from Yanni Verton and from Oscar Evans. That has to be one of the oldest, like in terms of age, the oldest line on a goal in the NIHL this year. The other goals coming from Joe Sylvester, and 11th of the year in D2 for Riley Panther. It was, and I can't remember the numbers, but yes, a 39 shot shutout for Tyler Campbell. Now, for those of you who've been paying attention watching the show for a while, Tyler Campbell for the Junior Devils has been lit up like a Christmas tree on multiple occasions and finally gets a shutout. Massive congratulations to him. A pretty decent performance as well there for Lewis Carter. He ending up making 46 saves on 51 shots. Unfortunately, his team unable to generate any offense. So as you can see, they travelled pretty short. I believe it is all over at the SSE. I'm pretty certain it is all over at the SSE. Given the message I have just received, 2 empty net goals for the Coventry Blaze. Certainly I've got one empty net goal by the look of it. One for Colton Sauceman. Are we going to get another one? But either way, the thing that has happened has happened. It's going to be talked about for a little while. But the Coventry Blaze are back for the first time in quite some time in the Challenge Cup final. Just going to quickly message my good friend Stuart Coles, just so we can get the word on it. But either way, Belfast, it will not be a Grand Slam for the Giants this year. Out at the Challenge Cup semi-final stage. The league title does look like it will find its way back to the banks of the Lagan. But the Challenge Cup will find its home in the Midlands. It will be Coventry or it will be Nottingham. Either way, we'll quickly go back to South 2. So there we have talked about that one. Peterborough keep going in the Eddie Joseph Memorial Cup. They've only lost 1 game, only lost 2 games in the entirety of this season, one of which was the second leg of the Cup final, which they won. But they beat Chelmsford by 6-3 in the Eddie Joseph Memorial Cup over at the Riverside to continue their good form. Not travelling with the largest of benches, but still able to do the business. 2 goals from Nathan Pollard and goals as well from Sam Barlow, Leo Markey, Jaden Eggleston and Connor Pollard. The Warriors goals coming from Dalton Thompson, George Taylor and Evan Shard. The news is this is the first Challenge Cup final for the Coventry Blaze since 2007. 19 years of waiting for the Blaze, but back in the Challenge Cup final for the first time in nearly 2 decades. Guildford, after losing the cup final, got a bit of a rebound at home on Saturday. They gave the Bristol Pitbulls 2 a bit of a kicking, 9-1. The final score in that one. The lone Bristol Pitbulls goal coming from Lee Duance. The Phoenix goals, a hat-trick for Josh Abbott, 2 for Josh Sherrington, which takes him past 200 points for the Phoenix. Congratulations to him. The other goals coming from Scott Bailey, Daniil Sakantsev, Jared Vigar and Sean Reynolds, who I believe it might be his birthday the other day, so congratulations to him. 9 goals on 68 shots for Morgan Parsons. A bit of a calmer night for Dimitris Volkovs, only 24 shots the other way. Rule 2, of course, here at BOTW, never count out the Invicta Mustangs, but the Haringey Huskies pay no attention to Rule 2, and they double up their visitors from Kent at Ali Pali on Saturday evening. 8-4 the final score for the Huskies over the Mustangs in this one. A hat-trick on the night for Carl Etouazim. 2 goals for Ruskin Springer Hughes, the other goals from Luke Martin, Stuart Appleby and Ollie Cooper. Sam Oliver with a hat-trick for the Mustangs in this one, and James Laming with the other goal for Invicta for their 4 goals on that one. A pretty close game that was back and forth at the hangar, but a vital 3 points for the Cardiff Canucks, of course, already in the playoffs, but wanting to make a push as high up the table as they can to help their seedings. They win by 4 goals to 3 at the hangar against the Slough Spitfires. Goals for the Canucks in this one coming from Zach Shanahan, Carter Lloyd, Joe Morris and Joe Tyrrell. Goals for the Spitfires in this one from Ed Cave Humphrey, Aaron Edworthy and Kyle Bradburn. I've just missed that number there. Look at that. Slough Spitfires only, I was going to say, 4 goals on 20 shots from the Canucks. There's not a good night at the office there for Rory McGibbon. And then, poor Invicta, they got doubled up, and then doubled up again almost beyond that point. Invicta 5, Guildford 11, because why defend when you cannot defend, as we like to say. But a big win in terms of keeping some pressure on Peterborough for the Phoenix in this one. 4 goals apiece for Scott Bailey and Josh Abbott. The others for Josh Sharrington, Sean Reynolds and Matt Tull. 4 goals for James Laming. And 1 for Jake Stedman, because fine. Poor Kieran White ends up keeping 11 goals and 45 shots. A calmer night for Oscar Minton, 20 off of 25 for him. Solent couldn't get maximum out of the weekend. They lose away at the Oxpens. A good solid win for the Oxford Rising Stars by 8 goals to 2 in this one. Out shooting 56 to 33. 2 goals for Chris Beckett, 2 for Joe Edwards, and goals from Charlie Cameron Reid, Matt Lorday, Griffey Parish and Mike Willock. The goals for the Junior Devils in this one from Yanni Vertinen and Cameron Lake. MK Thunder, like we said, we talked to them about a bit over the last couple of weeks, because they have been finding ways to get some results and really feel like they found their feet in D2. A 4-1 win over the Chelmsford Warriors in league action. Another 2 goals for Marks Canis on the season. You can see there 38 goals for the Thunder in 20 league games. The other goals coming from Rob Oxley and Ryan Onefor. George Beckett and Vaughan Quilter with the goals for the Chelmsford Warriors in this one. And then, well, Peterborough, we said Guildford needed to keep the pressure on. Peterborough thrive on that pressure, and they absolutely battered the Slough Spitfires at home. 10 goals to 2 at the hangar. A productive night for Nathan Pollard's side. Joe Farrant and Charlie Ottewell with the goals for the Spitfires in this one. And then goals across the lineup from the Phantoms too. 2 for James White, 2 for Connor Mellett, 2 for Connor Pollard. The other goals for Taylor Romeo, Leo Markey, Frankie Parnell and Nathan Pollard into the bargain. Both Rory McGibbon and Connor Dudley getting some time across this one. Poor Connor Dudley conceding 3 goals on 11 shots. Very calm night for Luke Clark at the other end, 2 on 19. Not many games in South 2 this weekend. Haringey versus Chelmsford at Ali Pali at 5:30 on Saturday. Invicta versus Slough down in Gillingham on Saturday night. Sunday, Slough versus Bristol 2. Oxford versus Peterborough at the Oxpens, as the Phantoms look to keep one hand firmly on the South 2 League trophy. We'll pause for a sec, because I need a drink before we talk about the WNIHL, and I also need to get my notes up. Let's just get those up quickly. But yeah, some crazy results as ever in the lower reaches of the NIHL. What we will do, let's just press this button, because of course, as I remember, for bits and pieces, for the SNL, for all your SNL update bits and pieces, SNL Ice Hockey updates on Facebook. Big shout out to Connor for letting us use his graphics this year. The box scores for NIHL's Division 1 and Division 2, NIHLstats.wordpress.com, and the fantastic Joe Scutts. And then when it comes to the WNIHL, we get sent our little wrap up from the fantastic Andrew Day. Who's been focusing really heavily on his WNIHL content this year. Massively appreciative of everything he does to provide me with bits and pieces. In WNIHL Elite League, 2 games on Saturday. A win for Solihull away at Bristol. A 3-0 victory for the Vixens. Katie Henry with 2 goals. Alexandra Vexi with the other for for the Vixens in that one, and the win on the road. Guildford are not out of the title race yet. It will be a bit hard. It's a bit of a higher hill for them to climb, but still managing to do the business as they win by 4-1 on the high road against the Streatham Storm. We don't have a goal scorer for the Storm in this one, but we do know that Margot Sire with a hat trick for the Lightning. The other goal coming from Alice Jones. The table, as it stands in the Elite League, he says when the buttons will eventually click through for me. An important win for the Vixens, though. 2 points off the Queen Bees, but the Queen Bees do have a game in hand in this one. Guildford have a game in hand on Solihull and are 2 points back of them. Whitley Bay have played more games than everybody else and are on 18 points. They drop down to 4th with Guildford's win. Streatham and Bristol prop up the table in that one. Fixtures this weekend in the Elite League. Solihull versus Whitley Bay is Saturday night at Hobbsmoat Road. That's a 6:25 p.m. face-off. 2 games on Sunday. Bristol versus the Queen Bees at 5:30 and 6:45 p.m. at the Spectrum. Guildford Lightning versus the Streatham Storm. And then we go through the other regional leagues of the WNIHL. Into the north, and a comfortable 6-0 victory for the Sheffield Shadows up in Dumfries against the Solway Sharks. We don't know 2 of the goal scorers on that one, but we do know there were goals from Hazel Wilson, Ishbel Wright, Caitlin Stocks and Lexi Yellett-Bilby. Andrew doesn't have the other goals on that one, but then the other game was on Sunday, and a solid win away from home for the Caledonia Steel Queens against the Nottingham Vipers. Kat Eastwood, Nikki Russell, Cynthia Tao and Jess Bridger with the goals for the Scots. Claire Jones with both goals for the Vipers in that one. The Kingston Diamonds still 2 points clear at the top of the North 1 table, but the Steel Queens only, as I say, 21 points with the Diamonds on 23, not out of range yet. Sheffield, with their win, are up to 15 points. They're in 3rd, followed by Nottingham, Solway, Widnes still bottom on 2 points. Just the one game this weekend in North 1, that's Widnes versus Solway. That'll be at 4:25 on. That'll be at 4:25 on Sunday on Merseyside. Nottingham 5, Dundee 1 is your final. The Guildford Flames have made the Elite League playoffs officially, so that's good news on that one. It means I get an extra game to commentate on. WNHL South 1, as you can see, no joy for the MK Falcons on the road against the Fire Bees. They are demolished by 9-0. 2 hat-tricks in this one. Rebecca Voslinski with a hat-trick. Margot Sire with a hat-trick for the Fire Bees. Freya Price with 2 goals. The other goal coming from Sophia Fajic. And then into Sunday, a close one. I don't know if Dave's lurking or whether he made it across to this one, but a win on the road for the Cambridge Kodiaks. They beat the Chelmsford Cobras by 4-3. A hat-trick for Christina Ashley and Josie Milton with the other goal for the Kodiaks. Teresha Plankova, Christina Powell and Brittany Stoneman with the goals for the Essex side. As it stands in South 1, the Top Cats, 14 games played, 24 points. Kodiaks, 13 games played, 18 points. Firebees, 12 games played, 17 points. So the Firebees do have a game in hand, but Kodiaks, as Dave says there in the chat, pushing for that 2nd place. Cobras in 4th, MK in 5th. Streatham Storm 2 are bottom of the table, 3 points from their 12 games played. 2 games this weekend in South 1, both on Saturday. Swindon versus Chelmsford at 1:10 at the Link, and 1:15 at the Hangar for the Firebees and Streatham Storm 2. North 2 Valerie, and not a good weekend for the Blackburn Hawks women, losing on Saturday and Sunday, losing 4-3 on Saturday away at the Kingston Diamonds 2. Isabella Oswin, Evie Reze, Carla Clark and Lois Tomlinson with the goals for the Diamonds there. Preston Janot and Catherine Fairclough with 2 of the 3 goals. We don't know who the 3rd goal scorer was, according to the notes. And then on Sunday, losing to Whitley Bay Beacons 2 up at Hillheads. Joy Hurst with a hat-trick, Claire Wilson with 2 goals, and the other goals for the Beacons coming from Holly Smith and Poppy Skelton. For Blackburn, 1 unknown goal scorer. We do know that Preston Janot and Catherine Fairclough both had 2 goals apiece. Whitley Bay 2 are top of North 2 Valerie. They have a 7-point lead over Diamonds 2, followed by Leeds, Blackburn, Sheffield Shadows 2, and the Telford Wrekin Raiders bottom of North 2 Valerie. They have no points at the moment. As it stands, North 2 Valerie, Kingston versus Sheffield is this coming Saturday at 12:30. Blackburn versus Telford is 4:55 up in Lancashire. Just going to quickly scoot down because I want to get North 2 Elizabeth, because as you can see, another game with a bit of a lopsided score. Nottingham 1, Caledonia Steel Queen Bees 18. So deep breath, everybody. This will be an interesting one. Lone goal for Nottingham coming from Liv Bolt. For the Caledonia Steel Queen Bees. 4 goals for Mara Phillips, 3 for Jess Bridger, 3 for Zoe Galloway, 3 for Asia Kenshebekova, and then other goals from Katie Gorton Phillips, Violet Mayer, Jordan Troop, Emily Camphouse, and Molly McGillan in that one. The only game of this weekend in North to Elizabeth comes up in Scotland. Caledonia Steel Queen Bees against the Leeds Thorns. South to Valerie, as it stands, there was one game called off. Solent versus Amazon is a fixture change. They will play. They will play this upcoming week. They will play this upcoming weekend in Gosport instead. So just the one game there. Chelmsford 3, Oxford 4. The final score. Zinnia Quilter with 2 goals for the Pythons. The other coming from Kezia Birchall. For the Midnight Stars, Lauren Summers, Natasha Federy, Stephanie Rance, and Charmaine Coles getting the. Getting the goals there for the Midnight Stars. The Midnight Stars currently top of the table. They have a 1-point lead over the Haringey Greyhounds and the Slough Sirens. 17 points for the Stars, 16 apiece for Haringey and Slough. Cardiff on 12 points, Solent on 7, Chelmsford bottom on 4 at the moment. Saturday, Oxford will take on Chelmsford, so that will potentially help the Stars on that one. Then Sunday, as we said, Solent versus Cardiff at 6:15 at Gosport. Haringey versus Slough is 6:30 at Alexandra Palace. The one game in South to Elizabeth, Invicta Dynamics with a continue their good run, a 5-4 win for them over the MK Falcons 2. A hat-trick for Charlotte Davenport Jeffrey, and goals from Laura Podstavka and Freya McCoon for the Dynamics. The goals for the Falcons coming from Erin Russell and Eva Lyon, 2 apiece for them. Fixtures though in South Elizabeth this weekend. Cambridge versus Lee Valley Vampires is on 6:45 on Saturday. Sunday, Bristol Huskies 2, MK Falcons 2 is 3:30 p.m. in Bristol. And then the last bit is the under-16 North. No games in the South this past weekend. A comfortable win for the Whitley Bay Beacons. They win by 9-0 over the Manchester Storm. 5 goals for Evie May Tyndall. 4 goals for Rebecca Goldring. Don't want to say so. Definitely not a one-woman team on that front. Kingston, the heavy loss at home. They lose by 10-2 against the Billingham Stars. Anna Ward with a hat-trick, Libby Foster with a hat-trick for the Stars, Mia Bradshaw, Freya Appleton, Ava Crumby and Matilda Wilson with the other Stars goals, Erica Proud and Eva Reze with the goals for Kingston in that one. And then a pretty heavy loss, another one at home for the Nottingham Vipers. They lose by 16-0 against the Caledonia Iron Maidens. A six goals apiece for Mara Phillips and Drew Henderson in that one. Thea Phillips, Evie Fraser, Rebecca Nixon and Sarah Donlan with the other goals in that game for the Scots. The Iron Maidens are back in action this weekend. They are at home against the Leeds Knights. That's at 12:05. And then Sunday, Whitley Bay versus Kingston is a noon face-off at Hillheads. It's not on there, but perhaps I've managed to not download the graphic. But there was a game in under 16 South. Bristol 4, Swindon 4. In that one. Goals for the Puppies, 4 goals, all from Ayla White. And for Swindon, 2 goals from Taryn Edwards and 1 from Lily Oliver and 1 from Isabella Cors. My apologies there. I clearly missed one of the graphics I was supposed to download. Sunday, Midlands Wrekin Raiders 1, Ice Bees 5 in the under-16s. Bethany Gordon with the Midlands Wrekin Raiders goal. For the Ice Bees, a hat-trick from Amelia Strachan-Jones. The other goals coming from Sky Wheeler and Lara Cannon. And then having had a decent win, Leicesters, or at least getting a result in Bristol. Not a good one for the Top Kittens on Sunday. They lose to the Chelmsford Rattlesnakes by 10-2. Ow. Just the one game in under 16 South this weekend. Haringey will take on Chelmsford. And then in the Frank Wright Conference, Peterborough Phantoms Women 3, Streatham Storm Development 8 in the West. The only game this upcoming weekend in the Frank Wright developmental conferences is in the Western Conference. Oxford Shining Stars versus Coventry Phoenix Rising. Apologies. Phantoms women goals coming from Lily Knight and 2 from Stacey Horn. Goals for Streatham Storm Development from a hat-trick for Gracie Flairhive, Isabel Nash, Sabrina Danzig, Sana Khan, Bryony Marshall with the other goals there. And so we have done that bit that we needed to do, and that means as I press this button, I've pressed too many things and gone through, but we've done it. Every single game from across every division, men's and women's, across all of British hockey, means that we will, for a bit, open the door. Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, anything you want to talk about, chuck it in the chat quickly. Coventry have made the Elite League Challenge Cup final, and are playing Nottingham on Sunday. I can only imagine the carnage that is going to be. Kodiaks too still looking for their first win this coming weekend. Could be one with a push. Currently sitting on 11 games, 11 losses, 16-4, 93 against. Hey, we've got that Romanian team to keep our minds in. Message from the Guildford social media. Have we qualified now? Yes. But that's it. Yes. So yeah, door is definitely open. Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings. Of course, the NHL back after the break. Good to see it back on ITV4 as well. I watched a bit of Monday's game between Detroit and Nashville, which was good. Surprised my wife a little bit by there being NHL on the TV. And of course, Frölunda winning the Champions Hockey League, because I'm sure people were paying attention to that. They defeat Luleå in overtime. Luleå actually getting a goal with I think it was like sort of 14, 15 seconds left to go. It was live on Austrian television, so I picked up a bit and watched a bit of it on that the other day because it was on. So that was a fun one to keep having in the background. Congratulations to them. Will the Leafs ever win another game, Anthony? I don't know. Maybe. Poor Steve Dangle is having an aneurysm as we speak about it all, no doubt. But yeah, another season of frustration and disappointment for the Toronto. There we go. Not sure what happened there. Apologies, folks. Just seems that my internet just seemed to die off for a minute there. Bit strange. Says I'm back now. Said it disconnected, then it reconnected, so I disappeared, and now I'm back. Ooh. I mean, if you're going to disappear at the end of the show, I think is probably the key factor to say in that one. But yeah, will the Leafs ever win another game? Probably not. Probably not the one you want them to, Tom. And there's probably the answer on that one. But yeah, busy weekend. I'm interested to see what we get from Fife on Saturday in Guildford. Had a lot of fun in games recently. Does anyone feel an element of a draw after having all of that Olympic ice hockey on TV to go down to none? You know me, Dave. I mean, we can't argue. We are the merry few. I think the mad people who will find it and watch it anywhere we possibly can. So, yeah, there's a lot to be said. Playoffs, of course, will be kicking off before too long. Which, if you've got a decent VPN, you'll find the German stuff, you'll find the Austrian stuff, the Swiss stuff. Try not to get your computer infected with a virus by watching it in too many illegitimate places, but certainly I'll be keeping tabs on all of my usual bits and pieces. What other bits are out this week to mention? Billingham Stars are out. We've got the Heated Taker got an interview with Jamal Watson, which was really interesting, fascinating guy. Do go check that out. Maccastalk Hockey, of course, are back. Talking about the fact that Swindon won the league title. They've got an interview with Chris Jones, to go check out. Jack and Charlie and Papa Mac to go check those out. Slapshot Syndicate, of course, out today at 6 o'clock. Do go check out the boys from Hull and what they've got going on as well. We are edging ever closer. We're in March. We are past the 14 years, 11 months mark now for BOTW. Unsure. I'm trying to get another Hockey Pieces story together, because it's one I've wanted to do for a while. I'm just waiting. I'm waiting on some contacts to get back to me about some bits and pieces, because it's one of those things where it's not one of those really, really big stories where I think lots of people will think it's amazing. But it's one of those stories I find really interesting, and I'm really interested to talk to somebody about, and I generally find I do better writing when I'm really engaged in it. Frölunda women won the SDHL. The playoffs has now started and are free on YouTube. There's your thing, Andrew. We're giving you more free hockey to watch. AIHL will kick off before too long. Let's just quickly get the website up for that. The AIHL.com. Because of course AIHL TV will be the place to check out those bits and pieces. Yeah, mention Frölunda and he appears. Yeah, say his name. Yes, Friday the 17th of April is opening night for the AIHL, and the return of both the Sydney Bears and the Sydney Ice Dogs. Of course, the rink at Macquarie finally refurbished, open, ready to go. And so those two teams finally back after a season of being a season out. They will open up the 2026 AIHL season, and then Saturday, April the 18th, everybody back. Melbourne Mustangs versus Central Coast Rhinos, Sydney versus Brisbane, Adelaide versus Newcastle, Perth versus Canberra to start the new season, and then the champions will be back in action on Sunday the 19th. Melbourne Ice versus Newcastle at the Docklands in Melbourne. Central Coast versus Brisbane. Perth versus Canberra, the second of that double header, because everybody gets to play double headers in Perth because they're so bloody far away. But yes, that was a good trick, Andrew. Somebody talk about Frölunda and he appeared out of nowhere, which was pretty impressive, all things considered. Double check those. That's fine. The other thing. The other thing that's occurred to me that I will go to very quickly. Hold the line, caller. Hold the line, because what we will do. Because he says, dashing back to the stream. This came today, which I'm going to have a look at, which we will open very, very quickly before we finish off now. Last call for questions, comments, thoughts and feelings and all the other good bits and pieces. Because I have got a package that has come for me. I'll show you what is in it. He says, so I'm not getting all of them out because I don't want to get all of them out, but as I'm a big fan of them. I've not found a set that I really, really wanted that I thought was worth the money, but I did manage to find a good deal on a few packs of the Tim Hortons Team Canada cards heading into the Olympics. Shall we do a pack on stream before we... Should we do a pack on stream before we close out? Do you want to see a pack? Should we see a pack before we go? I think we'll do one, shall we? Should we do one pack before we go? Let's have a look at what we get. Let's open it on camera, because of course my issue is I have my setup quite high up. So let's do this on camera and just see what we get. There we go. Let's have a scoop. There's those. Let's have a look here. So we've got Anthony Sorelli. Oh, we've got a Martin Saint Louis gold medalist. Behind that a bit so you can see that. And then we've got Ray Bork. That's not a bad haul for pack number one. We will take that. I've got 20 packs. We'll post the good ones. We'll stick some pictures of the good ones on the socials in a bit. Right, last call. Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings before we get out of here, because I think it is time for us all to go have a relax. I want to go have a sit down and nothing else. I pulled a muscle across the front of my abdomen. It's a bit sore from time to time. Not been too bad standing up tonight, but been a bit funny over the course of the days, particularly sitting down. It's just in an awkward space. But yeah, Guildford versus Fife should be fun. Would have mentioned the CHL win, but Anthony already mentioned it. It's a close OT winner for London now, 5 times winner. Yeah, they've been, but they are one of the marquee names of European hockey. It's the sort of thing you would expect from a team like Frölunda. In that sort of sense, like I said, it was a pretty decent game. But like I say, it's just one of those things. The CHL, I just find it very, very hard to kind of really get into, as it were. But it is what it is. Canadians don't need an extra finger to win. Well done, well done, well done. But yeah, Guildford versus Fife should be interesting. I've got, like I say, it's crazy to think that we're so close to the end of the season now. Preparation's going to start for bits and pieces. It's going to be a crazy end. We know who's won the national division. South 1 looks like it's going to go to the wire. South 2, just in case really of Peterborough getting over the line. By the look at it, North 2 feels like Sutton are pretty much there. On that one, lots of stuff still to be decided in the Women's League, but that will of course go beyond the end of the NIHL season. In the SNL, it feel like Edinburgh are pretty much there, given the games in hand they've got and the gap that they've got. But Cup in the playoffs very much open still in the SNL. It feels like, and then the playoffs. Playoffs particularly in in the elite and the national feel wide open, wide open, particularly the national. When you think about how MK have suddenly picked up, Hull have suddenly picked up, Swindon got there in the end, Leeds looking a bit shaky, Sheffield's form is all over the shop at times, so could be really fascinating. Could be a really, really interesting one as we start edging towards the playoffs, and not a million miles away. We'll call it there, I think, as we need to get going. Bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, your number one source for all things related to British hockey. In the box thinking for some unique insight into what it's like to commentate on the Elite League, so you can check out those bits and pieces. Of course, go check out the most recent one that came out today for Guildford versus Nottingham. There'll be one next week for Guildford versus Fife. And then if you want your long form, in-depth pieces of content, Hockey Stories is your place to go. Go check out the latest piece that is up on the website, my chat with Brad Bonello, former Edinburgh Capital, who Andy played against Sidney Crosby in juniors and was recently one of the stars of Shawsey. So go check that out over on the website, along with nearly 15 years worth of stuff at bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. You can go down into the link in the description. Links in the description to all of our socials. We're on X, we're on Facebook, we're on Blue Sky. You can go check out our virtual busking hat, of course, as well at buymeacoffee.com/BOTW. We're never going behind a paywall, but it does cost money to do bits and pieces. So if you like what you see and you want to help contribute to help keep the lights on and keep the wheels spinning, do go check out the virtual busking hat at buymeacoffee.com/BOTW. Also as well, YouTube bits, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Lots of stuff always going to be kind of going on. There'll be stuff going on over the off season as well when we get there. The plan is weekly streams until post Coventry weekend, and then we'll probably revert to our off season monthly format. Let's see how we do. Lots of stuff, like I say, but lots of stuff going on. Pieces will be coming out over the summer as well. Not going to sit still. We don't sit still very well in this house, so there'll be plenty of stuff to check out. And then of course the other thing is, like I say, once you subscribe to the channel, you get the alerts that we are going to be here. But we will be here live Wednesday night for the remainder of the British hockey season, 8 p.m. The only show, every game, every league. This is where British hockey lives. It is a Wednesday night here on the BOTW What's Current stream. Big thanks again to everybody for joining us this week. Like I say, the end is in sight. Crazy to think, isn't it? But there's still so much to be done. Be happy. And if you can't be happy, then wherever you are, please do everything you possibly can to please be safe. As my friend Scotty Watts would say, take care of yourself and somebody else. For bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, this is Anthony Russell saying stay safe. And so long till next time. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your hockey wherever you find it. We'll catch